Hey everybody, my name is Angel Kane and I'm the park naturalist here at Smithgall Woods State Park. And today I want to take you on a virtual tour of our Wetland Loop Trail. This trail is a little over half a mile and it actually explores a wetland that was created by a beaver dam. A wetland has three basic characteristics: water, characteristic soils, and plants that are adapted to wet conditions. Wetlands are very important because they provide food, shelter, and protection for different species of amphibians, fish, birds, and even reptiles. To the right of me, you will see the floodplain. The floodplain is formed when Dukes Creek overflows its banks and deposits its sediments. This area is ideal for wetland formation because it has very rich soils and a water table that is close to the surface. If you look to the left, you will see a slope. This slope is unfavorable for wetland formation simply because the water will rush off the surface and the water table is very deep below ground. So that is why the wetland has actually formed on the right side. So here on the slope, you will find different plants than you would lower on the slope. Here on the higher side of the slope, you'll see things like little white oaks, hickories, and when you go down the slope, you'll see things like river birch. Now, you'll see things like river birch at the bottom of the slope because it's more adapted to those wet conditions. Things like oaks and hickories don't do well in wet conditions, so that's why we find them higher up on the slope. The standing dead tree behind me is called a snag. Snags are very important for wildlife habitat because primary and secondary cavity nesters such as birds, squirrels, and even chipmunks use these snags for protection. They create their homes, and they also use these snags in order to forage for insects that are actually eating the decaying wood. I am standing in front of an Appalachian mountain stream. An Appalachian mountain stream is characterized by a V-shaped profile, a dense canopy of evergreen trees such as the eastern hemlock, and dense tangles of evergreen shrubs such as doghobble, rhododendron, and mountain laurel. These evergreen trees in the canopy, such as the eastern hemlock, play a very important part to this Appalachian mountain stream. Without the tall trees in the canopy, the sunlight would actually penetrate onto the forest floor and actually cause the temperature of the mountain stream to rise. If temperatures increase, then conditions will become unfavorable for our wildlife species in the stream, such as our mountain trout. I mentioned that one of the important canopy trees here at the park is the eastern hemlock. This little guy beside me is an eastern hemlock. Now, while it's still small, this tree will grow up tall to join the other trees in the canopy and actually help provide shade to the stream. But these guys are actually under attack from what we know as the hemlock woolly adelgid. The hemlock woolly adelgid is a small aphid-like insect that came over from Asia. What the hemlock woolly adelgid does is it attaches itself to the underside of the branches and sucks the sap out of the tree. Once all the sap is sucked out of the tree will die. Once the tree is dead, the hemlock woolly adelgids will then move on to the next healthy tree. This is a problem because these adelgids can keep moving around until large stretches of trees are actually dead. So the good news is that there is treatment for the hemlock woolly adelgid, and that is an insecticide that is applied around the base of the tree. This insecticide is sucked up by the tree and actually kills the hemlock woolly adelgid. Each year at the park, we treat hundreds of trees for the hemlock woolly adelgid. If you think that your eastern hemlocks might have the hemlock woolly adelgid, it's really easy to tell. All you have to do is flip the underside of the branch over and look for tiny white cotton balls all over the underside of the branch. If the underside of the branch is covered in tiny white cotton balls, then you know you have a problem with hemlock woolly adelgid and you need to start treating your trees to protect them from dying. So I actually found something really cool, you guys. This right here beside me is what we call a fiddlehead. A fiddlehead is new fern growth. So this new fern growth is actually coming off of this Christmas fern right here. Now, a Christmas fern is really easy to identify in nature. It gets its name Christmas fern because it stays green through the holidays. So this is the only fern you would find around Christmas time that's still green. Another way you can actually identify Christmas fern is by looking at the shape of the fern. So I like to look at it as it kind of looks like an elf shoe. It always comes to a point. Another way you can identify Christmas fern is if you actually pull one of these leaflets off and you turn it sideways, it looks like a stocking. So with it looking like an elf shoe or a stocking, it lets me know that it's Christmas fern. Another cool fern I found is this guy. Now while it looks shriveled up and dead, it's actually 100% alive. This guy is known as resurrection fern. The reason it's called resurrection fern is because in dry conditions, it'll actually shrivel up and look dead. But as soon as the next heavy rain comes, this guy will spring back to life. He'll no longer be shriveled up and he'll be bright green, showing us that he's still alive. Most plants can only lose about 10% of their water before they die. This resurrection fern can lose up to 97% of its water and still come back to life. Pretty cool plant. As you'll notice behind me, the landscape abruptly changes from trees to shrubs to open marsh. Now over time, this beaver pond will no longer exist. The dirt will fill the pond in, the shrubs and the grasses will start to grow back, and the trees will actually begin to grow back. So this pond will be turned back into a hardwood forest like it was before the beaver even built his dam here. This process is called succession. The tree beside me is American hornbeam. It's also known as musclewood and ironwood. The reason it gets its name musclewood is if you look at the bark, it looks like a smooth muscle running up and down. The reason it gets the name ironwood is because this wood is extremely hard. Pioneers used to use it to make mallets, tool handles, and lots of other things. This tree can be identified by its very jagged leaves. This is a common plant that you would find in the understory around a swamp. So it's pretty unusual to see a giant boulder in the bottomlands. This guy is actually a relic from glacial times over 10,000 years ago. Now while Georgia was not covered in ice, temperatures back then were a lot colder and we had a lot more rainfall than we do now. So what actually happened is, as it rained, water collected in the cracks of this rock. The cracks of this rock would then freeze. Over time, this caused the rock to be pried loose from the top of the mountain, and it actually tumbled down the mountainside and landed here in the bottomlands. The tree to the right of me is a river birch. You can easily tell it apart from other trees because of the peeling bark. So this bark is really cool because it can actually be used as kindling for a fire. Even when it's completely wet, it'll still burn. Behind me is the swamp edge. The swamp edge is a great place to see things like rabbits and birds because they actually use this area for forage and cover. As I mentioned, this wetland was created by a beaver dam. The beaver created the dam in order to protect his home, or the beaver lodge. In order to make a beaver lodge, beavers use their very large teeth, as you can see, to chop down large trees. This large tree that I'm sitting on was actually chopped down by the beaver here. Once the beaver has the tree chopped down, he will then use his sharp teeth to cut small twigs and limbs off of the tree. Then he'll carry these twigs and limbs back to his lodge in order to build the home. Now, to get from land back to the water, the beaver has a lot of characteristics that make him special. Beavers have thick fur that's completely waterproof. Along with thick fur, they have this tail and webbed feet that help them swim through the water and back to their lodge. Beavers also have nose and ear valves that they can close when they're underwater. Along with this, they have what is called a nictitating membrane that actually covers their eyes and keeps the water out of their eyes. So all of these traits allow for that beaver to go on land and back to his home without any problems. So without the help of the beaver, we would not have this wetland ecosystem that I've showed you today. Beavers are called environmental engineers because of the habitat that they create. By damming this pond and actually creating his lodge, this beaver created habitat for lots of other wildlife species. The pond is a great place to find amphibians. Amphibians spend half their lives in water and half their lives on land. One of the most common amphibians we find here are frogs. Frogs lay their eggs in the water because they are protected from predators. The reason that they're protected from predators is that there are no large fish in this pond to eat the eggs. So the frog will come to the pond in order to actually lay the eggs. Once the eggs are laid, the eggs will hatch and turn into a tadpole. A tadpole is a baby frog. Over the course of a few days, the tadpole will start to grow legs and has a tail. The next stage is the froglet stage. This looks like a frog that we know, but it still has remnants of a tail and it has all 4 of its legs. The last stage in the frog's life cycle is the adult stage, when it's an adult frog. Once the frog is an adult, he will hop out of the pond and onto land. This process is called metamorphosis. Thank you for joining me on a virtual tour of our Wetland Loop Trail. In this video, you got to explore a wetland that was created by a beaver dam. You also learned that beavers are called environmental engineers because they create habitat favorable for many other wildlife species. You also got to see many plants and trees that are adapted to these wet conditions found in a wetland. Thank you for watching, and we hope you can come take a hike on the trail for yourself.